Hey, now joining me now is one of my favorites here, political journalist John Fund. John Fund, welcome back to the program. I wanted to ask you about this very interesting CNN poll, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. There has been so much controversy around Trump. The honeymoon is clearly over. He is fighting on all fronts, from tariffs to higher education to deportations to the courts. The media is slaughtering him every single day, yet a new CNN poll says that just 2% of Trump voters would change their minds and change their vote over all of this. I'd love to get your takeaway. And is it that Trump is fighting the very people that his supporters want him to fight, and those people don't care what the media has to say, or even, frankly, what the share market necessarily has to say?
Well, 2 points. One is we're very polarized. Therefore, people are going to stick in the corners that they started out with, especially because if you're a Trump voter, you recognize the enormity of the task in front of him and you're willing to give him some slack or patience. But, if 2% of people think that they would vote for someone other than Trump if they voted for him in November, that's basically balanced out by Kamala Harris voters who since the election have realized how vacuous she was and perhaps she wasn't qualified to be president. So the CNN analyst, Mr. Enton, concluded that the election wouldn't have changed as a result of these minor variations, which of course are within the polling margin of error.
Do you find that surprising, as somebody who has, spent their entire life in and around the media, that the constant media drumbeat and telling people how terrible a job Trump is doing, that's just not simply landing with the American people, and that everybody is so balkanized now into their two camps that it's almost impossible to move the dial with anything that happens?
Well, in the 1960s, 67% of the American people trusted the media all the time or most of the time. Now that's down to 27%. And those 27% are almost certainly partisans who don't change their mind easily. People have become very adept. They're not stupid. They've become very adept at figuring out what the facts are in something they're told and where the opinion begins. And they pretty much filter out if what they think is just the reporter's spin or the reporter's imagined facts, and they focus on something verified. They still believe that reporters can do who, what, where, when, and how. They just don't believe they can explain any of it.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. But I want to also talk to you, John, about another phenomenon here, which is even more disturbing than I think any sort of balkanization of the American people here, and that is the persistent rise of political violence in America since Trump has come back to power. Now, just this week, we had news that a man was allegedly arrested after allegedly setting fire to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence. He's a Democrat, but apparently it's allegedly that over his stance on Israel and Palestine. This comes after a 17-year-old teenager was arrested for allegedly killing his parents to obtain the financial means to carry out some sort of plot against President Trump. And of course, we've seen all the burning and vandalism of Teslas and Tesla dealerships. The left seems to have a real problem with its fringes, becoming even more mainstream. You think about the Luigi killing of the healthcare CEO. Seems to be a lot of tolerance for taking things, out of words and into actions here.
Well, I'm not one who wants to automatically ascribe ill motives to one side of the political divide or the other based on who the crazies on their side of the fence are. I will say this. Parties, regardless of which ones they are, should be judged by one simple standard. If there is violence or the incitement to violence, do you completely, unalterably, and irrevocably denounce it and say there is no excuse? And sadly, in some of these, you hear hedging and, qualifications and doubt, and that's just unacceptable. What's wrong is wrong, and that's it.
Indeed. That's well said, and I wish we'd heard more of those condemnations from the left. I want to ask you also about this story. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has closed a global engagement center that was run by the State Department. Now, this had been allegedly to counter foreign disinformation, but it does seem like it had been used in practice to silence and censor the voices of millions of Americans, using, again, that disinformation excuse. This seems to me like it's a real sort of blow for openness in the political sphere. What do you make of it?
After World War II, when the Cold War began, we had a famous expression in American foreign policy that discussion of such issues as this should stop at the water's edge. In other words, you don't go overseas and you don't use those media outlets there to criticize American foreign policy. Politicians don't do that. Those seem like very quaint bygone days.
Mm.
We have now global propaganda systems. Every country has them. Uh, Ours is particularly ineffective in representing American interests. It seems particularly effective in representing other interests, however. So we've dismantled a lot of that. The VOA, the Office of Global Media, Radio Free Europe are going to be cut back. The Czechs, by the way, are picking up the new tab for Radio Free Europe, and that's a good thing. Who better to understand Europe than the Czechs?
Yeah.
So I think that the Chinese can propagandize. Most people don't pay attention to it. The Russians can propagandize. Most people see it's obvious. We can propagandize by being successful, and that's the job of America. To be successful is to be a beacon of liberty and hope for the world.
John Fund, this is going to be a fascinating few years. Thank you so much, as always, for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. I'll let you get back to the beach.